The house is filled with the Spirit, eh? Rafe Perlman. Yay, Rafe. I think we can go home now. So this month has been about creating our spiritual home, and we certainly have done that with the music and charging up the molecules and the atoms of this room. Because the truth is, without a strong spiritual foundation underneath us, it's very difficult to move forward and to move out into the world and to serve. One of the questions that we have been sitting with this month is, does your home match who you are right now? So if your life has changed, does your home reflect that? And at the same token, if your house has changed, have you changed within? Because the universe is a hologram. We can't change one piece of it without everything else changing at the same time. And we are asking that question collectively about Seattle Unity and about this building. Does this current building reflect who we are now and who we are called to be in the future? How can we best serve South Lake Union and Seattle and the world? So these are some of the questions that we are looking at right now, because we create sacred space in our homes and our work and our places of worship. And last week we talked about how we bring it out into the whole world, that the world is our sacred place. So as we enter into this Thanksgiving holiday, it gives us an opportunity to celebrate the harvest and to give thanks. And so when I was looking up the word appreciation, the definition is to increase in value. And whatever we appreciate then tends to grow, whatever we are grateful for. And I think dogs are like a perfect example of when we show appreciation. There's like an immediate response, right? When you say, good dog, they're like, yay! And if you say bad dog, then of course it's, the opposite. But you can see that direct experience when we're praising and appreciating our pets and how they respond. And are we any different, really? From our pets? No, we want it. Jesus said, "For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even that will be taken away." Now, when we look at this scripture at first, it sounds like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean like the 1% will keep getting more wealthy and the rest, everything will be taken away? And I think when we look at it as a spiritual practice, the practice of appreciation, I think what he's saying is that if we don't appreciate those things that we have, it'll go away. And this is certainly true of our talents, isn't it? If we don't appreciate and use the gifts that we have, the talents that we have, what happens? We lose them, sort of, right? They're kind of gone. If we don't appreciate our possessions, they kind of gather dust and take up room and space and energy. But when we use and appreciate those things that we have, it's like they're a part of life with us. And what about our relationships? When we appreciate our relationships, they expand and they grow and they deepen. And it has also been scientifically proven that the greatest contributing factor to experiencing happiness in life is how much gratitude we show. Members of 3 universities in Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Michigan wrote a paper in 2005, and it was a study called Positive Psychology Progress, Empirical Validation of Interventions. Okay. So, one of the questions that they had listed in their study that they wanted people to fill out is, A, most of the time I am bored. And then you have to scale that from 1 to 5. 1, never. 5, one is low, 5 is high. B, most of the time I am neither bored nor interested in what I'm doing. C, most of the time I'm interested in what I'm doing. D, most of the time I'm quite interested in what I'm doing. And E, most of the time I am fascinated by what I am doing. Really, when I look at this, it's like being in the present moment, isn't it? It's like Do we enjoy the present moment? Do we enjoy what we're doing? Are we appreciating and giving fully over to that experience because it increases happiness? Now, there's a group called Soul Pancake. They have a YouTube channel. And they read this study and they thought, hey, why don't we check this out and try it? So they invited people in. They had participants that applied, and they came in and they filmed them while they were doing this. And first they had them take the happiness test. You know, they filled out a bunch of questions, rated things from 1 to 5, and then they kind of came up with a number of their happiness factor. So when that was over, the participants thought, well, good, okay, so that's done. But then the leaders said, okay, what we'd like you to do now is close your eyes and think about someone who has influenced you positively in your life, someone who has supported you and cheered you on, someone who's been there for you. And then they said, we want you to write about this person. Write about this person. So one guy wrote about his mom, another woman wrote about her friend, another about her sister, and one guy wrote about a teacher that he had years and years ago who was since deceased. So they're like, okay, that's great. Now the study's over. Now I can move on. And they're like, no, it's not over yet. Now we want you to take this letter and we want you to call the person that you wrote this about. And they're like, are you kidding? And they're like, nope. So the guy who had written about his mom calls her up and he goes, Mom, you know, I'm kind of on this like YouTube TV show, and so I'm supposed to read this to you. And she's like, all right, whatever. And he said, the person that influenced me most would be my mother, Marlo Dawson. She's a single mother of 2. She's a very hard worker and dedicated to her family. I love her to death, and she keeps me going with positive talks. Now, I say that, you know, but he was crying when he said it. And she's crying while she's listening, and she goes, I'm so blessed to have such a great son. Okay, honey, thank you. Have a great day. Another woman called her sister. And her sister, and she said, I have to read this to you. And her sister's like, is everything okay? Is something wrong? And she's like, no, I'm in this experiment, and I have to read this to you. And she said, Erica's my older sister and my best friend. And sometimes it feels like we're twins. She's my #1 fan and my #1 supporter. She makes me happy because despite all my mistakes and my decisions, she still loves me no matter what. I will never forget when she flew 3,000 miles at the drop of a phone call to save me from a bad breakup. And her sister, of course, was flabbergasted. And one woman had to call, the friend that she wrote about was in England, and so she woke her up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And she said, I know this is weird, but I need to read this to you. So that's great. It's very beautiful. I suggest that you watch it on YouTube. It's Soul Pancake. Then they said, okay, you're not done yet. We want you to take the test, another test. So it was basically the same test, but what they did is they changed the wording so that people didn't know they were taking the same test. And what they found at the end of the test was that the people who wrote the letter, but they weren't able to call this person, either because they were dead or for whatever reason they were unable to do it, they saw an increase in happiness by 2 to 4%. The people who were able to not only write the letter, but then read it to the person that they were writing about had an increase in happiness between 4 and 19%. But the biggest surprise was the person who came in with the lowest happiness factor. In other words, nothing was working in their lives, everything was not so good. And then they did the exercise, saw the most increase in their level of happiness. So what does this mean? It means that when life is the toughest, when things aren't going very well for us, it means that we can do a practice like this and it will have a greater effect on us. Again, what did Jesus say? To he who has, even more will be given, but he who has not, even that will be taken away. It's the basic premise of the law of mind action. What we focus on increases. So if we're focusing on the good, if we're focusing on what we love, that increases. If we're focusing on what we don't want, guess what? That increases. We sang the song, I have no complaints, right? So what I wanted to do this morning, because we are talking about what is the future of our building of Seattle Unity, the board, the visioning team has been working on that. And I think that to stand on that firm foundation, it's important that we have gratitude to our founders who built this building with intention, prayer, hard work, and their financial support, because it was through their generosity and service that created this place of worship, of study, and of community for over 50 years. So if you would drop the screen. Now, this church began in an Eagles Hall, and the story is that when they would come in on Sunday morning, they'd have to set it up, but the place smelled of beer and cigarettes from the parties the night before. And they would clean it all up, and they said, you know, by the time the service started, the energy in the room was just charged, just like it is right now. So what you're going to see is a 5-minute piece. And it is, you're going to hear Marge Lindenau. She was on the staff for at least 20 years, if not longer. She was here when I got here. And you're also going to see a man by the name of Mr. Layton. And you'll notice there's a plaque on the door going out to the prayer garden. He and his wife created the original prayer garden that's out there. So I'd like you to hear. Oh, there's no picture. Are you having trouble, Raimi? We'll be patient. Yes, we will. So the prayer garden was founded by the Laytons, and so you'll see him and you'll see Marge Lindenau. And if not, then I guess I'm going to have to tell you the story. So give me a heads up if you think it's going to work, and if not, let me know and I'll just move on. Aha.
And we had some wonderful times. When we were we begin to see the structure go up. We'd come down, and the staff would come. At least once a week, we'd come down and walk on the scaffolding, walk on the planks, and we'd go, this is the room that's going to be this, and this is where the chapel will be, and this is where, and we'd bless each of those spots and each of those areas. And all the time we were building it, we would went to the chapel, and Dorothy's dream was that chapel would be so impregnated with prayer that anyone that walked into there would feel that presence there. And we held when it was built, we held our prayer times there every morning at 9 o'clock and every noon at 12 o'clock, and the staff was required to be in there for our daily word and our time of prayer. And every room, we'd even go into the closet and bless that room for the coats that would be hanging there, and for the book counter, and every single room in this building. Our contractors, Genthoff and Forbes, were the contractors, and it was such a wonderful experience because he would say so many times to me and to the rest of the staff, there is something here. I don't know what it is, but he said there's something here, because every subcontractor that he hired were here on schedule. They finished on schedule. They never did have any problems. Everything just always went so peacefully, and all the men that worked here just said they just couldn't believe how wonderful it went. We did have, it was interesting, we had a steel strike the summer before in Seattle. The summer before while we were building, and we were quite anxious about that because we thought, oh dear, we were so well on our schedule that but as we'd have it, we'd pray about it, and Dorothy O'Connor especially would say, now wait a minute, Jesus Christ is the head of this church, all will be done in divine order. And so 2 days before we were to have the steel delivered, the strike was over, and we got our seal on time. So everything went just like that all the way through.
At the time that we were moving into this church, well, as you all know, there's a balcony. And if you take a look at the size of the benches that had to go upstairs, no way to ever get them up the stairwell. So there's only one way, heave-ho, up and over, with a team up above, team down below, the smaller men down below, the taller ones, just like a ladder. We got them up there. And but all this is a Lake Rock. So they're up there. And this is what unity is all about, cooperation. If your heart is in it, things produce, and they open up, and unbelievably, they open up.
We laid the tile on the floor. They were 12-inch tiles. Remember, we used to put down vinyl tiles. And so he would put them in place, and I would iron them with a warm iron, and then I'd sit on them. I could do 2 at a time. I'd sit on them and wait, and not only that tile came loose. The rocks that are in the pools were all gathered by the congregation from the beaches of Washington. They asked, and we did that for 7 or 8 months, and they were brought here and put into the unfinished part of our building as the building came into being, and the colored rocks. And so we hired a woman from Bellevue that did mosaic work, and she laid all of the stones in as a pattern, and I think you can still see it right down through the center of that. There's a little white line that flows, and we made that with little tiny white pebbles. And that was the pure light of Christ that flows through everyone's soul.
This is Dorothy O'Connor's idea. So she had everybody out scrambling in the river beds and on the seashore picking up rocks, and meticulously they're all laid into patterns, and they're still out there. And they'll be there for a long, long time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nani. There's no water in them now, but you can still see the rocks that were placed there with intention. So as I wrap up, I just want to share with you one more story, and it's a story of a guy named Mike Robbins, who's an inspirational speaker. When he was 7 years old, he started playing baseball, and that was his dream. And he ended up getting scouted by the Kansas City Royals. He was in the minor leagues pitching, and at the beginning of the 3rd year in the minor leagues, he got out to pitch and he threw out his arm, and it was over. It was over. He hurt his arm so badly that his whole baseball career had ended. He was this close to manifesting his dream, and it was gone. When he was asked if he had any regrets, because that was very difficult to let go of that, he said the only regret that he had was that he was so busy trying to make it that he didn't appreciate the moment. He said most of the time he kept thinking that he wasn't good enough, or he was comparing himself to everybody else, or he was holding his breath and hoping that he wouldn't mess up. And so he was so focused on getting ahead that he didn't appreciate the moment. How many of us do that here? Right? It's like the next thing, I got to get to here, and I've got to do this, and I've got to finish that we miss the moment. There's a movie out right now called About Time. It's about time travel. And it's a father and son movie, and the father's also a time traveler. And he said to his son, who's grown, he said, I have one bit of advice for you. And that is, try to be as present as you can in every moment. But also try this experiment. Live one day like you normally live it, with your stresses, and you've got to accomplish this, and you've got to do that. Just do it. But the next day, go back in time and relive that day again. Only this time you already know that the project is done and the meal is served and all those things that you have to do is done, so you don't have the same stressors. And go through that day and see what happens. And so he goes through the day again, only this time he's present. When there's a woman giving him his fast food the day before, he just grabs it and runs. The second day he stops and he looks at her and makes a connection. He laughs at things that seem so serious the day before. And so being in the present moment is appreciation, isn't it? It's appreciation for the breath. It's appreciation for being here now. Because remember, whatever it is we do appreciate increases in value. So we are laying our spiritual foundation, and we do it partly today in thanking our founders. Remember that Jesus said that whoever has, even more will be given. That goes for our talents, it goes for our possessions, and it goes for our relationships. And it's been scientifically proven that the greatest contributing factors to experiencing happiness is how much gratitude you show. Well, guess what? Lucky us, it's Thanksgiving. And what's Thanksgiving all about? It's about giving thanks. It's about gratitude. It's about being present in this moment. So don't miss it.